Hi guys! Alright, so still doing reading this week, but we're moving into informational text. So today our friend Frederick Douglass, who's this handsome guy that's in all these pictures, is going to be teaching us about something called timelines today. So Frederick Douglass is a very important person when it comes to the civil rights movement, which is people that fought for people of all different skin colors to be treated the same. So he's kind of like Martin Luther King Jr., but before Martin Luther King Jr. was ever even born. We're going to learn a little bit about him, and then he's going to teach us how we can take his life, his history, and turn it into something else that we can create. Right? So Frederick Douglass. All right, so Frederick Douglass, he was born in 1818. This is a little cartoon of him. He died February 20th, 1895. So died a long time ago, over 100 years ago. So that means he was alive about 200 years ago. And whenever he was alive, Black people weren't just treated unfairly, they were actually owned as slaves. And they did work for people who did not want to do the work. And it was just a really hard time. But Frederick Douglass pushed America into going into the right direction with making sure that Black people were beginning to be treated fairly. And we know that's something we're still fighting for today. He was most famous for the civil rights movement, which is, like Ms. Acton said, fighting for the rights of everyone, not just white people, not just Black people. Anybody can have the same rights as anybody else. If you're a human, you should have the same rights. And then one of the quotes that he has is, "There is no struggle, or sorry, if there is no struggle, there is no progress." So basically, he's saying if you don't struggle, if you don't push yourself, if you don't sweat, and all that stuff that you do when you work hard, then you're not going to show any improvement. You're not going to get any better. So everything that we're going to be learning about Frederick Douglass is stuff that's happened in the past, and that's stuff that is called this thing that's called history. So everything that we learn about anything that's happened in the past is considered history. So if it's something that happened yesterday, it's history. If it's something that happened 1,000 years ago, it's history. If you're talking about dinosaurs, that's history. Frederick Douglass was someone who existed yesterday, day before that, and so he's a part of history. And anything that has happened before today is a part of history. There's just certain things that we want to pay a little bit more attention to. And Frederick Douglass is definitely someone important in history that we should be talking about. So here's an article about Frederick Douglass. And what's cool about this article is that it goes in order of his life. And a fancy way of saying that is saying it goes in chronological order. Chronological order. What a big word. And all that word means is that whatever you're reading, whatever you're looking at, it's going in order. So this article starts from when he was born, goes to whenever he's like 8 years old, then 12 years old, then when he's an adult and he escapes from his home that he's being treated very badly in. And then it talks about what he does as an adult. And at the very end, it talks about whenever he dies. That's in chronological order. It starts from the beginning of his life, moves to the middle, and then goes to the end of his life. Chronological order. That's a word that you're going to need to remember. Let's read a little bit about Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born in February of 1818. He was born in Maryland. His mother was a slave, which meant that he was born into being a slave. Whenever he was 7, he was sent to a new plantation or new home, and he rarely ever got to see his mother. Never got to see his mother very often. Then around the age of 12, the man that owned him, he had a wife, he started to teach Frederick to read. However, there was a law against this. Slaves were not allowed to read, so they got in a little bit of trouble, and she had to stop teaching him. But he already knew enough to where he started to teach himself how to read, and was sneaking like books and stuff that some of the other kids that were able to go to school and able to learn how to read. He was sneaking their books and learning. So since he was reading, he was able to read newspapers and articles about slavery, and he began to realize how wrong slavery was and how he didn't deserve to be treated the way that he was. So he started to teach other slaves how to read so that they could follow in his path, and so he could get more people to understand that slavery was wrong. Finally, he decided instead of getting caught, he just wanted to be free. So he decided to jump on a train on September 3rd, 1838, and he boarded a train to escape. He escaped to the state of New York, where he was a free person. Once he was up there, he was able to try to free other slaves that he had come across. He wrote a book about his life as a slave, and then he basically stayed free for the rest of his life and helped other people who were dealing with slavery until the day that he died of a heart attack. And he's so important and so special and did so much good stuff that we're talking about him right now. So that just shows you he's a really good guy. So, people have made timelines about Frederick Douglass, and they go in chronological order. As you can see, 1818 is when he was born, so that's where they would put some information like that. And I know you can't see the information on here, but just know each little box has a bunch of information about Frederick Douglass, and it goes in order. So it goes from 1818 to 1822 to 1826, and it keeps going up. And I bet if it kept going, it would go all the way to when he died in 1895. These are some other examples of timelines. This is a Benjamin Franklin who invented the light bulb to help light up our rooms. There's a timeline of George Washington, who was the first president. And you can also see timelines of animals and how they grow into being eggs to tadpoles to frogs, like a life cycle of a frog. A life cycle of a butterfly can also be shown in a timeline. A life cycle of your life can be shown as on a timeline. You could talk about the day that you were born, your favorite birthday, when you started school, the first time you read a chapter book, when you rode a bike. You can put all of those things on a timeline and create a timeline for yourself. So that same article about Frederick Douglass, if you're wanting to make a timeline, which is what you're eventually going to be doing for Miss Acton, Miss Ramos, and Miss Just, you have to pull the important information out, which is normally the dates. So Miss Acton has done that by underlining them. So we're going to talk about the day that Frederick Douglass was born. We're going to talk about how he started to learn to read, because that was one of the big things that helped him understand that slavery was not okay. If he didn't learn how to read, he probably would have never figured that out. The day that he left his home to get away from slavery and be a free man and not have to work for somebody. He wrote a book, and then he died. Those are all important days of his life. So what Miss Acton did was took all of this information, and I'm going to put it into a timeline, all right? So the first thing that we're going to have on our timeline is he was born in February 1818. The next thing that we have in our timeline, because we go in like this, so that's the first one, he was born. Then the next one, 1830, he started to read. He was 12. And we go more, now go up to the top. September 3rd, 1838, he escaped on a train, and we know after that he became free. He wrote a book about his life. And then the last thing that I have on our timeline is Frederick died on February 20th, 1895. So what I want you to take away from this lesson with Miss Acton today is that you can read articles just like this one, take information out, and you can make a pretty good looking timeline. Now, if we go to the timelines that Miss Acton showed you before, like the Ben Franklin one, they put pictures of Ben Franklin. They put where his house is. They put things that he made, things that he invented, things that he did. All of those things were put into his timeline. There's also a title. There's no title on ours. We could add pictures on here. We could add images. We could add a picture of maybe the book that he wrote. We could add an image of maybe the town that he was born in. I think it was Maryland is what they said. We could draw a picture, put a picture of a train right here to show our readers that look at this that it was a train that he escaped with. So you can add all kinds of details to make your timeline special to you. So what you guys are going to be doing is working on some vocab with your timeline, where we're going to be talking about the word timeline. We're going to be talking about chronological order, which is when things are put into order. And we're also going to be talking about history, which is anything that has happened in the past, and especially things that are important. You're also going to be doing some fun other activities in here, so have fun, and just remember that timelines are important, so important that you're going to have to make one on your own. All right? Bye, guys.